Good afternoon, freedom lovers. This is William Moore, and you're watching Beyond the Ties That Bind. Before I get going, I'm going to show everyone the shirt in its entirety because I'm sure there's people looking at the screen right now going, what in the hell is he wearing? Okay, the shirt says, "This is your asshole. This is your asshole on government. Any questions?" This shirt and many other cool pieces of apparel can be found on Etsy at the Abolish Government store. So run over there right now and pick yourself up a cool piece of conversation starting apparel and let the discussions begin. And trust me, they will. Okay, today, before I get going, I've completely forgot about this. I'm not a big sports guy. The only sport that I absolutely love is hockey. The others I really don't care for. I follow hockey, follow the St. Louis Blues, our first Stanley Cup in 50 years. Hoorah. Anyway, so I've completely forgot about doing this, but I wanted to say congratulations to the Chiefs who won the NFL Super Bowl this past week. The Chiefs play in Kansas City, which is a suburb of St. Louis. So, anyway, I wanted to congratulate the Chiefs on their victory and for representing the St. Louis metro area in such fine fashion. So, anyway, now let's get started with today's program. Um, Breaking the law. So many people out there think that just because a politician or someone in the legislature writes something down on a piece of paper, special piece of paper, it's a fancy piece of paper, and then they take this fancy piece of paper to the local courthouse or the state capitol or the federal capitol, and they have a pseudo religious ceremony that all of a sudden that piece of paper becomes holy and all the words written upon it are to be obeyed by the peasants. Let me ask you this. Can there be a crime or can you be breaking the law if there is no victim? Answer, no. Nada. There seems to be a lot of people that are under the assumption that everything government does must be obeyed. Really? So, when you're traveling down the road, minding your own business, listening to some Mozart, some Beethoven, Chopin, maybe some Alter Bridge, maybe some Bach or Kiss, and you see these lights flashing behind you, and you're not doing anybody any harm. You pull over, the guy gets out, he's wearing a little smoky bear hat, cute little hat. He's dressed up in his Masonic garb, and he comes up to you and he tells you that you're going to be receiving a citation for breaking the law. Have you really broke the law? Absolutely not. You may have broken a mandate that was scribbled down by some guy on a piece of paper in order to be able to collect revenue from the peasants, but you haven't broken a law because there is no victim. There cannot be a crime without a victim. The very definition of crime itself, the original definition, not the definition in the dictionaries today, boys and girls, but the original definition of crime, there needed to be a victim. Someone who has had his life or property damaged by another person. So when the government gets together and they do all their fancy hocus pocus, it's all for one thing, to keep you under their power and to generate revenue, to collect revenue from you. That's the only reason that government exists, is to force other people to comply to a will of a certain group of psychopaths. So you can't be breaking a law, especially when the law that you break was created by this club. And the members of this club are not held accountable to the same rules that they write down on their special pieces of paper. So they cannot, according to natural law and law of the creator, hold anyone else responsible to their bullshit that they write down on their special pieces of paper that they can go stick up their ass. Okay, let's talk about being a law-abiding citizen. Do people realize that in America, killing a baby inside the womb is legal? However, if you try and keep that woman from killing the baby inside the womb, you are committing an illegal act. You're breaking the law. So, also, Colorado, I believe, you cannot collect rainwater. I think there's a 110-gallon limit, but a few years ago they were going crazy with it that nobody could collect any rainwater whatsoever. And I'm not sure if Oregon changed their law. I know there are a bunch of status socialist assholes up there, and so there's still something on the books, I'm sure, that restricts gathering rainwater. Just so they can fine you, just so they can control you. That's all they want to do. So, also, do you know that it's legal in America for two people of the same sex to get married? And it's getting illegal in some areas in America for anyone to speak out against it. Now, two consenting adults doing what they want to do behind closed doors, that's fine. I've got no problem as long as they're consenting adults. Now, what we found, and I worked for the Missouri Department of Corrections and I was inside the MOSOP program, what we found is that most homosexual relations or sodomite relations have a bit of coercion in there, meaning a threat of force. People are being coerced to adopt to that lifestyle. So I'm going to speak against it because, first of all, it's against nature. It's against nature. Now, when a man and a woman have a loving relationship and that leads to uh, some type of physical activity, Mr. Sodomite, they don't have to get up and wash fecal matter off of their genitalia, nor do they go around uh, with their breath smelling like they just ate a San Francisco street taco. So, anyway, it's against nature. Therefore, if it's against nature and it cannot rightfully um, reproduce, or it's a threat to the uh, larger community that it's a subsegment within, then I'm going to speak against it. So, like I said, if you want to practice these behaviors behind closed doors, that's fine. But don't come out and preach that everyone has to accept what you do, because when you're doing that, you have an agenda. And your agenda is an agenda that's most likely 99.9% of the time destructive to the society that you find yourself living within. Take 100 sodomites and put them on an island somewhere. Go back in 50 years and all you'll find is a well-decorated island full of bones, which should prove to anyone that that society cannot last on its own. And if it cannot last on its own, it's destructive to the society which it finds itself within. So, anyway, back to breaking the law. So, in some areas of the country, it's against the law to speak that way. What I was just saying. Um, Illegal to travel 10, 15, 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. If that person's traveling 10, 15, 20 miles per hour over the speed limit, they go flying by you, they didn't hurt you, then what have you got to be mad about? Other than you're jealous that you can't control your vehicle at those speeds? I used to drive down Interstate 44 between St. Louis and Springfield doing 95 miles per hour. Didn't hurt anyone. There was no victim, so there was no crime. No one ever got hurt. Now I drive at about 75, 80 miles per hour because I've turned into my dad and I want to see if I can get better gas mileage on this tank than the last tank of gas that I had. Sucks getting old. But anyway, so if you did not hurt anyone, then you have not committed a crime. The only people that commit crimes consistently on a daily basis is government. Why? Because they're stealing from everyone and then they threaten everyone's life if people don't comply with their theft. So they come, they steal, and if you stand up for yourself and say, "No, I don't want you taking my property," then they will kidnap you and you will become their hostage. And if you resist, they'll kill you. So the only one breaking natural law on a consistent basis is the US government that a lot of people out there worship. And how do we know that a lot of people out there worship the United States government? Because they were kissing that Trump ass after that State of the Union address this week. And I am going to be going through the State of the Union to show people if you can accept logic and fact, and if you can accept data, true data. I mean, if you suffer from cognitive dissonance, if you can't think critically, then just, tune out. But if you can think critically, I'm going to go through, and I want to give a shout out, thanks to Clay Bowler, who has just documented every lie that Trump said, everything that he stated that was a lie, and then backs up the data to show that he was lying. Best economy ever, my ass. Bill Clinton had 4% GDP growth. And then you go back to the 1950s, 60s, we're talking close to double digit GDP. So it's just a lie to come out there. I mean, his ego, this guy, I mean, he is so egotistical. And a guy like that is a guy that you don't want to trust with power. So egotistical that he'll lie, believe his own lie, and expect you to believe his lie. And if you don't believe his lie, you're an enemy of the state. Well, guess what, Mr. Trump? I'm an enemy of the state. Um, so, breaking the law. If there's a body of people, an entity of people out there, a little group of people, some psychopaths out there, and they're writing stuff down on a piece of paper and saying you need to obey it. However, they're not held accountable to the same standard. That is not law. The only law that exists is do no harm to others. I mean, it's the eternal law. It's the law that was from the beginning. It's the law that Messiah, he when he was asked what the great commandment was, of course, to love the eternal one, Elohim, the creator, with all of your heart, soul, and strength. But to love your neighbor as yourself, which entails to not do anything unto your neighbor that you wouldn't want your neighbor doing to you. It goes back to no one has a higher claim over your life or property than you do. And you need to recognize that no one has a higher claim over your neighbor's life and property than your neighbor does. So that, I mean, so do we break the law when we're breaking these laws that are wrote down on a special piece of paper by other men, and then there's a pseudo religious ceremony taking place in a building that has columns in front of it? Are we breaking the law? Do you really want to be a law abiding citizen? Because if you're a law abiding citizen, you're going to say it's okay to kill a baby in a womb. If you're a law abiding citizen, you're going to say that that lady has the right to do so. If you're a law abiding citizen, you're not going to try and do anything to stop her, even going up to her and speaking with her. In some states, that's a crime. So if you're a law abiding citizen, you're going to turn in people who collect rainwater. If you're a law abiding citizen, the law actually states that you're gonna turn your neighbors in when they break some of those laws. That's what a law abiding citizen is. I'm not a law abiding citizen. I don't want to be a law abiding citizen. I don't want to turn my head the other way if there's a lady that's about to abort her baby. I'm not going to let the sodomite agenda go forward without speaking out against it. So I'm going to go 10, 20 miles per hour over the speed limit if I need to get somewhere and I'm in a hurry. Um, I'm going to collect rainwater. I'm going to plant a garden. I'm going to do the things which sustain life and don't harm other people. And you people out there, you Christians that say, well, what about Romans 13? Well, Romans 13 has no manuscript authority, and you really can't find any original manuscripts before the 1500s that have the first 7 verses or sentences of Romans chapter 13 included in them. Also, I need to ask, why would a man who spent his entire life breaking civil law, the law of civil authority, tell people not to break the law of civil authority? And then he was put to death because he broke the law of civil authorities. Also, prove to me that if the first 7 verses of Romans chapter 13 are legitimate, that it was speaking of civil authorities and not authority within the assembly. Um, so, anyway, we need to be a people that can defend our beliefs logically. Government is not legitimate. There is no legitimacy to government whatsoever. Um, the definition of crime, as far as the government is concerned, is an action or omission that constitutes an offense that may be prosecuted by the state and is punishable by law. However, that's not what the definition of crime originally was. The definition of crime was an act against a person or a person's property that caused harm. So you need a victim. Government is not legitimate. There is no legitimacy to government. If we look up the definition of the word legitimacy, it says ability to defend with logic or justification. Validity. So, can you logically defend government? Can you logically defend a group of people being delegated to go around and rob from other people and then kidnap other people if other people do not submit to the will of this group of psychopaths? Can you defend that logically? Can you defend logically people being killed, innocent civilians being killed by a group of psychopaths just because that group of psychopaths wants to control another country's natural resources? Oil, black gold, Texas tea? Can you logically defend that? No, you can't logically defend it. No one can logically defend those types of actions. So don't be a law abiding citizen. The only instruction that we need to be concerned with is the instruction we were given from the beginning and that Messiah reiterated. Love the Creator. Show him the respect as the Creator. Yes, I believe in a Creator. Yes, I believe in design. You cannot whatsoever convince me that the human body didn't come forth um, by design. You can't convince me of that. It's you can't defend that position that this just happened by random chance logically. And you can't use my platform, the logical platform, to try and defend your illogical platform. So don't do it. Don't try it. If you want to believe there's no creator, that's your call. That's fine. But don't expect me to believe that same type of garbage. So, because even the very existence of the law which states, do no harm to others, had to come from somewhere higher than man. Because man, left to himself, produces people like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, George W. Bush, and whatever the hell that Hillary Clinton thing is. So let's not worry about being law abiding citizens. Let's worry about the true eternal law or natural law. Um, we need to realize that anything man does is corrupt, and any motivation behind any law he creates is corrupt. It's only to generate revenue for the state at the expense of the poor. So anything they scribble down on paper that has nothing to do with harming another person or bringing harm to someone's property, that If you want to call it law, then let's spend our time breaking the law. Until next time, this is William Moore with Beyond the Ties That Bind. Peace.